My life was calibrated to the millisecond. I'm Felix. I deal in vintage horology, specifically high-end, rare, and astronomically expensive watches. My world is a silent, velvet-lined room in Boston, where I inspect tourbillon mechanisms with a jeweler's loupe. I wear three-piece suits. I don't sweat. I don't rush. And I certainly don't go outdoors. My current obsession was the Phantom Mariner. It was a prototype dive watch lost in a 1960s shipwreck off the coast of Nova Scotia. It was the Holy Grail, and I had hired the only man crazy enough to go get it. His name was Knox. He didn't run a business. He ran a rust bucket of a salvage trawler called the Rusty Anchor. I met him on the dock at 5 a.m. The air smelled of rotting kelp and diesel. Knox was alarming. He was massive, wearing a waffle-knit thermal shirt that had holes in the sleeves and waterproof bib overalls. He had a week's worth of scruff, tattoos climbing up his neck, and eyes the color of sea glass that looked at me with pure, unadulterated amusement. "You're the clock guy," he rumbled, spitting something onto the dock. "It's a chronometer," I corrected, clutching my briefcase. "And I'm Felix. We have a contract." "Yeah, we do." He looked at my Italian leather shoes. "You gonna dive in those? Or are you just gonna stand there and look pretty while I do the work?" "I am here to verify the find immediately upon surfacing," I said stiffly. "Oxidation begins the moment the metal hits the air. I need to be here to stabilize it." "Right. Stabilize. Get on the boat, Fancy. Try not to slip." The trip out to the wreck site was 3 hours of hell. The ocean was not a flat, blue surface. It was a churning, gray washing machine. I spent the first hour gripping the rail, praying for death. Knox spent it eating a ham sandwich and whistling. When we reached the coordinates, the atmosphere changed. Knox stopped being the lazy, mocking sailor and became a machine. He suited up. Dry suit, tanks, helmet. The gear was heavy, industrial stuff. "All right," he said, his voice crackling over the comms system as he sat on the edge of the boat. "I'm going down. It's deep. Currents are nasty today. You watch the line, Felix. You watch the air monitor. If that needle drops below red, you winch me up. Fast. Don't wait for me to ask." I don't know how to operate the winch," I said, panic rising. "It's the green button. Then the lever. Don't mess it up." And he fell backward into the freezing, black Atlantic. For 40 minutes, I was alone. Just me, the rolling ocean, and the hiss of the radio. "Visibility is 0. Knox's voice crackled in the speaker. "I'm at the hull, moving to the captain's quarters." I watched the air gauge. It was steady. I watched the winch line. It was taut. "Got it," he said suddenly. "I see the safe. It's rusted open. I see ya. I see the watch. Is the crystal intact?" I yelled into the mic. "Looks like it. Putting it in the bag. Heading you." Static. A loud, screeching burst of feedback. Then silence. "Knox," I said. Nothing. "Knox, report." The line, the yellow umbilical connecting him to the boat, suddenly went rigid. It started vibrating violently. I looked at the air gauge. The needle twitched. Then the boat lurched. A massive, rogue swell hit us broadside. I was thrown across the cabin, slamming into the wall. The boat listed heavily to starboard. I scrambled up. "Knox!" The winch motor groaned. It was straining. The line was caught. He was stuck down there. I looked at the controls. Green button. Lever. I hit the button. The motor whined, a high-pitched scream of metal, but the drum didn't turn. The line was jammed in the spool. "No, no, no," I whispered. I ran out onto the wet, pitching deck. The winch drum was a tangled mess of steel cable. It had bird-nested. The mechanical system was useless. I had to pull him up. It was impossible. He was 200 feet down, wearing 100 pounds of gear. But the air gauge in the cabin was dropping. I saw the emergency manual crank. It was rusted. I grabbed it with my soft, uncalloused watchmaker hands. I jammed it into the slot. I pushed. It didn't move. "Move!" I screamed at the ocean. I threw my entire body weight against it. My Italian shoes slipped on the wet deck. I fell, skinning my knee, tearing my suit pants. I got up. I didn't care about the suit. I didn't care about the watch. I grabbed the crank again. I planted my feet, and I pushed until I saw stars. Creak. It moved. An inch. I found a rhythm. A desperate, frantic, agonizing rhythm. Push. Grunt. Push. Grunt. My hands blistered instantly. My shoulders felt like they were tearing. I was screaming with every rotation, a raw, animal sound I didn't recognize. I don't know how long I cranked. It felt like hours. It was probably 10 minutes. The rain started, freezing cold needles against my face. Finally, the water broke. A black, rubber-clad head surfaced. He was alive. I locked the crank and ran to the rail. I hauled on the line, dragging him to the swim platform. He was limp. Knox! I grabbed his harness and heaved. He was impossibly heavy. I dragged him onto the deck, collapsing backward as he flopped over the gunwale. He ripped his helmet off. He was gasping, taking huge, desperate gulps of air. His face was pale, his lips blue. Line caught on the wreckage, he wheezed. Winch died. I know, I sobbed, crawling over to him. I was shaking violently. I pulled you up. I used the crank. He looked at me. He looked at my ruined suit, my bleeding hands, my face streaked with rain and tears. He looked at the manual crank, which was still smoking from the friction. He started to laugh. It was a wet, coughing, terrifying sound. You hand-cranked a diver from 200 feet? You told me not to wait. I yelled, hysterical. He rolled onto his back, closing his eyes for a second. Jesus, Felix. He sat up slowly. He began stripping off his gear. The heavy tank, the weights. He was shivering. The watch, he said, tapping a pouch on his belt. It's there. Screw the watch. I shouted. You almost died. He stopped. He looked at me. The amusement was gone from his sea-glass eyes. There was something else there. Something intense and dark. Come here, he said. We need to get you warm, I said, reaching for a towel. Felix, come here. I froze. I stepped closer. He reached out with a hand that was still shaking from the cold and the nitrogen load. He grabbed the lapel of my ruined jacket and yanked me down. I fell to my knees on the wet deck, right between his legs. You saved my life, he rasped. I just turned the handle. You ruined your suit, he whispered, his eyes scanning my face. It's just fabric. He reached up. His hand was freezing cold and wet. He cupped my jaw. His thumb brushed my lip. You're a hell of a winch man, Felix, he murmured. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was freezing cold and tasted of salt water and terror. His mouth was hard against mine, demanding proof of life. I made a noise in my throat and grabbed his wet thermal shirt, pulling him closer, needing his heat, needing to know he was solid. The rain was pouring down on us. The boat was rocking violently. My hands were bleeding. And I didn't care. I opened my mouth to him, deepening the kiss, tasting the ocean on his tongue. He groaned, his other hand coming up to tangle in my wet, ruined hair, holding me in place like I was the only anchor in the world. We broke apart, gasping, our foreheads resting together. The watch, I whispered, breathless. Is it okay? He laughed against my mouth. Yeah, it's fine. But I think your feed just went up. I'm keeping the watch, I said, shivering as the adrenaline crashed. Fine, he said, wrapping his arms around me, pulling me against his cold, wet chest. But I'm keeping you.